Come on up. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and, first of all, thank you all for showing up. This is the second time we've done this now where we've had elected officials from the local, state, and federal government here. All these people represent you. We've got myself, Mayor Joe DePeno for City of Yelm. I represent about 11,000 people here in the City of Yelm. Commissioner Grant, she represents about 60,000 in her district. State Representative Marshall, represents 150,000 in his district, and Congresswoman Strickland represents about 772,000 people. So again, thank you all for showing up. I'm gonna go ahead and first introduce Ali and Remy. If you could come on up, please. And they are from Girl Scout Troop 42092, and they are gonna lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Great job. Let's give them a hand, please. All righty. So we have Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland, myself, Representative Matt Marshall, Commissioner Rachel Grant, and thank you again so much for being here, for all of you for being here as well, taking time out of your busy schedules. We do have a couple ground rules. If you want to ask a question, we've got a lot of questions so far, but will you please go ahead and answer or write down a card from one of these two ladies over here, or the gentleman over there. Just raise your hand. They'll come around. You can write down your question, and we're going to try to get through as many of these questions as we can in this next hour. I know a lot of us will be here afterwards to answer any other questions if yours didn't get answered up here. So please be patient, be respectful for the answers, and let's get this started. All right. We're going to start. Let's start with how about the Congresswoman on some of these pre-submitted questions. The first question is, one thing you're working on, or excuse me, let's go over 1 minute of introductions and anything that you want to go ahead and talk about. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead. Congressman Strickland, please.
It takes a village, I swear. All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Marilyn Strickland. I represent the 10th Congressional District of Washington State, and I very intentionally chose Yelm as a location for a town hall meeting that I'm part of. And I think it's important because we'll just talk about the facts. I lost 3 precincts, 60-40 in this district. But regardless of who you voted for, I still represent you. And you're going to hear me talk about some things tonight. And I'm not here to criticize anyone for how you voted in the last election. You made the choices that you made because you thought it was going to be best for yourself and your family in this country. But as a member of Congress, I do have a responsibility to let you know how some of these things may affect you. So I'm honored to be here with you today. I want to take your questions. And I think for us, I'm hoping that we give each other the grace and the space to be completely candid. So thank you very much for letting me be here today, and I look forward to this forum.
Well, good evening, Representative Matt Marshall. I'm actually a lifelong resident of Washington State, born and raised, and then my only hiatus from the state was when I left to serve the military. So I lived all over the country and the world. My profession is as a physician assistant. I work in healthcare. I also teach. I've been teaching college for about 10 years. And so my committees are well aligned with this at the State House. So I am the assistant ranking member in the healthcare committee for the state. I am also serving on the state K-12 education committee. I'm also enjoying some of the discussions and learning that happens on appropriations. And as you all have seen, the state is not doing the best financially right now. So lots of hard decisions that we're going over, and we can discuss some of those tonight if that's what we want to. And then I'm also going to stick around after, so if we don't get to everything, I'll be here. So look forward to talking to all of you.
Well, I'm Rachel Grant, formerly known as Rachel Dreon, which is the signs you would have seen, but I decided to get married before I took office in December. So happy to be here. I'm your Thurston County Commissioner. A lot of people don't really even know what commissioners do, and I'm still learning myself. And you know, I'm just really excited to be able to come out and really start to get to know Yelm. I've been working really hard in these first 3 months to come out, to start touring, to work with have been out doing different kinds of tours and learning about the different services that we have out here in Yelm. You know, and while I represent the whole county, you know, in some decisions, it really is about my job is around things like the courthouse and the sheriff's office and health and local things happening, the things that affect us on a regular daily basis. You know, and so if you're interested in talking with me about land use or transportation or behavioral health or health, you know, these are the things that I'm working on right now. And I'm really looking forward to collaborating, getting to know all of you. And I will announce here that actually my husband and I, we're in temporary living situation right now. And we've made a decision that the only way that I can get to know the people that I represent is moving here. And so we'll be doing that in the next few months. And so you'll be seeing a lot more of me. And to Yelm, yep. Even though Sheriff Sanders said I need to move to unincorporated Thurston County outside of Yelm so that every decision that I make will affect the house that I buy. So I may be looking there. So if anybody knows of any good places, we're looking to buy. So thank you.
Thank you. And for me, as mayor of Yelm, some of the biggest things we're focusing on the last few years here have been increasing public safety. We've done a lot to invest in not only safety for our officers with our body cams, but also accountability too for folks, for everybody. We've increased our jail budget here in Yelm, so for those that we do arrest, we can ensure that they are put away. For other investments in public safety include body cameras that we were the first in Thurston County to go ahead and implement those. So we are leading in a lot of different ways. But I do want to go over a couple of our major projects that we're working on too right now currently. That includes the water tower near Walmart, which we're almost finished. That'll give us enough water for years. Our Yelm Loop, which working with the state partners, we're hoping to start construction this year. The utility lines have been moved. They're finished. Well, I shouldn't say finished. About a week more, they should be finished, completed moving those utility lines. And then construction will start later this year. We got roundabouts coming in over at Five Corners. At Vale, we got Bald Hills. We got one in front of McKenna Elementary. And those are all fully funded and ready to go. You'll start seeing construction later this year on those as well. We also have our water reclamation facility, about a $37 million renovation that we're doing for that, and that'll be completed here in the next few months. We have an activated alleyway right by City Hall, behind the Yelm Pho and some of those restaurants down there in that area. And we'll have farmers market, we'll have food trucks and all that down there. And then across the Nisqually Bridge, we're going to do a trail. We're going to do replacing the railway bridge, renovating that and making that into a walkable bridge. So we're doing a lot in Yelm. We got about over 20 projects this year that we're working on right now. And that's up from about 12 projects from last year. So we're building and we're doing a lot of infrastructure real quick. But let's jump into our questions now. And let's start with the Congresswoman. What's one thing you're working on that will impact residents here in Yelm?
So I'm working on a few things that will have an effect on residents in Yelm. And I would say two things that have taken place that I'm very proud of. In the last Congress, for the National Defense Budget, We got a 15% pay raise for anyone who's serving in the military, E1 through E4. And I know that you have people who live in your community who are active duty and serving. And this is important for a few reasons, because a lot of folks who serve in the military do not live on post. They actually live in the community, 70%. So that's one thing I've worked on. The other thing that I'm really proud that I've worked on too is that we were able to pass a bipartisan infrastructure bill. And that means a lot of money is coming to the state of Washington to work on things that aren't that interesting or sexy, like a wastewater treatment plant, like repairing bridges, repairing roads, and putting people to work. But those are things that keep you safe. They're part of your basic daily life, and they're two things I worked on specifically that I'm very proud to have been champion of and sponsored.
All right, same question. So I guess I'll start with a bill that I am actually the prime sponsor on that's still alive. I had probably 13 that died at House cutoff, so I'll start with the one that's alive. What it does is it actually is going to align with other states on how medical practices use certified medical assistants. And right now we're seeing that physicians, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, they're spending more time in administrative tasks than they are actually providing direct patient care, which what that means to all of us is longer wait times. The providers can't have as large of a patient population, so they're not accepting new patients. If you call in for a medication refill, the medical assistant takes that phone call and tells you they'll talk with their provider, and then it might sit for an entire day or a week or get forgotten about. And so what this is allowing is with standing orders, physicians can delegate some of these administrative tasks to include prescription refills to their medical assistants on written standing orders. So when you call and you talk to the medical assistant, if it's not a controlled substance, it's just a standard prescription, they'll be able to refill it for you right then and there with the physician co-signing it within 72 hours. So this is something that costs, my favorite part of it, costs the state $0. It's actually not something that we're really expanding the scope, but we're aligning nationally with what is happening in other places. Something that I'm a co-sponsor on is some property tax relief for veterans, disabled veterans, and lowering that threshold so more disabled vets can have access to property tax decreases or potentially no property tax. I would like to see that all of our property taxes come down, myself included, but this was something that we were able to actually move forward in the House, and so I'm proud to be a co-sponsor on that one.
All right, one thing that I'm working on. I don't think any of us have talked about one thing, but one of the things I'm really excited about, of course, Joe already mentioned it, is that I'm learning all about transportation, and I know that this was one of the main things that I heard about on, what are we doing about the traffic in Yelm? And, the reality of it is in the next few years, there'll be 7 different new roundabouts. Thurston County is actually helping and paying for the one at Vail and 507. Yelm's working on 5 Corners, and Pierce County's working on the other one, and then the Yelm Loop will come around in just a few years here. So we're working hard on that. But the one thing I want to talk about, what I'm working on, the thing that's the most important to me, and one of the main reasons I ran, many of you know that I'm a person of lived experience, meaning that I'm a recovering addict and a person who needed mental health help at one point in time. 21 years ago, I was a drug court graduate. And so the thing that I've been working on is, along with our legislature, we're working on a couple bills, 1813, House Bill 1813. I've been testifying on behalf of our county that will allow our county to have more flexibility in the way that we pay our bills, so that we can get more services like mental health services and behavioral health services right here in our own communities. So we're working on that. And we're also working on something that will look a lot like St. Pete's, but it will be only for mental health and substance use disorder. So more to come on those things, working hard, and a lot of pieces have to be put in place.
Thank you. And here in Yelm, the biggest focus that I'm working on and the city is working on is transportation infrastructure. We've heard loud and clear that that's what the biggest concerns are. I've lived here my whole life. I get it. I've drove in this traffic since I was a kid. Probably a kid. But I've been driving here for a long time, and that is the one thing that constantly comes back. Finish these projects, and that's what we're doing. You're gonna see the completion of the Yelm Loop after decades of delays. We're gonna see that finish. We're gonna get some new solutions like these roundabouts. We're just gonna start and finish those very soon. And we're looking at other possibilities. We're having conversations about another bridge. We're having conversations about JBLM access. We're working with a lot of different partners, everyone up here, to create these solutions, transportation solutions that Yelm needs. All right, moving on, next question. And let's start with Commissioner Grant on this one. What steps are you taking to create more good-paying jobs and increase economic development in our region?
Okay, so for me, what steps am I taking? So one of the cool things about being a commissioner is you get appointed to all of these different kind of collaborative, they're like commissions and boards and all of these kinds of things. And one of the ones that I was appointed to is PAC Mountain. And so PAC Mountain is actually the workforce board. It's a consortium of Thurston, Mason, Grays Harbor, I think, and Lewis. And we all get together and talk regularly about what are we doing to encourage and what are we doing to support our workforce. And so that's one thing that I'm currently working on. I'm actually flying to DC next weekend to be a part of the National Workforce Board Conference, so I can figure out what can I do, to help with good paying jobs. What are the things that we can do right here in our rural communities to grow our own? How do we help the people who want to stay here and live here and still earn a livable wage? So I'm working on that. And economic development, I want to mention STEADY before I hand it off. So South Thurston Economic Development Initiative, I think. Yep. Ooh, I did it. So there's this really cool group of people who get together, and many of you are in the room that'll be getting together tomorrow morning. But this group are all the South County Chamber of Commerce and anybody who has anything to do with economic development gets together once a month. And we share information. We talk about what are we doing and how can we spread the different resources across. So if you haven't heard of STEADY and you want more information on that, and you're a local business or someone who's interested in getting involved, please let me know after.
All right, well, there's a lot of work going on in the House that is going to affect the economy. It's going to affect jobs. I can't say that I'm most optimistic about a great majority of some of these decisions. Things that I have done is work on amending bills, specifically ones that would be creating more burdens on small businesses and the business community at large. I've been working with multiple small business owners, the Association of Washington Business, at trying to find strategies going forward to help with regulations, help with the really crippling B&O taxes, working on trying to make sure that we don't add anything new, which after hearing the Senate update today, that's a much longer discussion than we have time for right now, but I'm willing to have it after this. When it comes to creating more jobs, I have been very supportive of enhancing the CTE, the Career and Technical Education programs here in Yelm and really across the state to include ensuring that we are able to enhance some of the marine CTE that's available even into high schools. So that's something that may be passing out of the legislature this year to really stimulate the marine economy that we have around the Puget Sound.
Great, thank you. So when I think about job creation, I think of two sectors that are interrelated. There are jobs that we create by making investments through government funding, like infrastructure, supporting building more housing, working on workforce development to make sure that people are trained to do the work. And then there are private sector jobs, and they're not mutually exclusive. Joint Base Lewis McChord has an $18 billion annual economic impact for the state of Washington. It is the largest single-point employer and crucial to what we're trying to do in the Indo-Pacific and in many things around the world. So making sure that Joint Base Lewis McChord remains strong, that it remains a place where those who get stationed here have a good quality of life, good housing, access to childcare, those things are very important. In addition to that, I have worked with the Nisqually tribe of Indians because they want to build more housing. And so we've been able to help secure funding to help them be successful as well. And I say this because when we think about economic development, it's also like, how many jobs did you just create? And it's really an entire ecosystem. It's housing, it's education, it's job training, it's public sector, it's private sector. And when we're able to partner together through federal, state, local, and city government, then we all have a machine that works together. But it is important for us to have jobs. We want people who choose to live in the South Sound to not have to drive to Seattle to go to work or anywhere else. So let's show we have talent. Let's show that this is a great place to live. Let's make the investments that improve the quality of life, and that's how we attract the jobs as well. Thank you.
And here in Yelm, the biggest thing we're doing to try to help economies, the local economy here, is let businesses do their thing. We're not trying to burden them with unnecessary regulation here. We're not raising taxes. We haven't raised property taxes here in the city of Yelm for the past 4 years, and we won't continue. We're allowing businesses to grow by themselves and be successful, letting them run their businesses and staying out of their way. Moving on, next question. What policies or resources are being prioritized to improve healthcare, housing, job opportunities for veterans and service members in our community? Representative Marshall, do you want to start on this one?
All right. Well, I already mentioned my first one on veterans, which is trying to decrease property taxes. Other things that are always on my mind is trying to help with JBLM in that area at transitioning soldiers who are leaving active duty to make sure that they have somewhere to land. I'm actually working with what's considered the Veterans Caucus, which is not an official caucus inside the House, but it's both the House and Senate, representatives and senators. We get together once a month and we brainstorm ideas on how we can better address veterans issues. One of the ones that's near and dear to my heart is veteran suicide and veterans mental health. And this is something that there's a lot of work to do on. I know it's something that, working with the local VFW, we see the impacts. Anybody who's served knows somebody who's struggled and knows that you've been that phone call in that time of need. And right now I've known multiple people that are having trouble interfacing and getting access to mental health care through American Lake. And even with some of the new federal regulations that make it easier to get civilian treatments, it's just the access to providers in general. So I am working hard to try to champion a way to enhance the availability of mental health care across the board, but my passion and driving motivation is really veteran suicide and veteran health care. So I plan to be drafting quite a few bills here in the interim now that I'm starting to get my legs under me and understand how the process works. I will have quite a bit of legislation in the mental health realm coming out into this next session.
Mayor, could you repeat the question?
What policies or resources are being prioritized to improve healthcare, housing, and job opportunities for the veterans and service members in our communities, or in our community? Excuse me.
Okay, so I'm actually working on a bipartisan bill, and I'm co-sponsoring it with Blake Moore from Utah. And this is going to be a bill that will provide incentives for developers to build affordable housing within a 15-mile radius of any military facility. We have a housing supply shortage. We need more affordable housing, and that is one way we can do it. But as far as providing health care for veterans, I'm going to be completely honest with you. What is happening right now with Elon Musk is unconscionable. The fact that they are doing this in the name of efficiency and arbitrarily cutting jobs without a plan, without a strategy, is just wrong. So one thing I'm doing for veterans is that I'm fighting tooth and nail to make sure that this administration does not fire veterans. These are people who have fought in wars for us. These are people who have worn the uniform. And for an administration to go to a veterans administration and say, I'm just gonna cut a bunch of people, and here's the deal. Everybody believes that government can be more efficient. That is not breaking news. Any one of us who've had interactions with any agency knows we can do it better. But let us not use a chainsaw. Let's use a scalpel and be intentional and thoughtful. If we want to decrease the wait time that one of our veterans has to wait to get access to mental health care, well, let's talk about that. Let's look at the systems. And maybe in the name of efficiency, we may need to hire more people so they can see someone faster. So I think this is really incredibly important as we talk about what we're doing for veterans health care. Another thing that I think is important as well, though, is looking at Medicaid. Medicaid takes care of people who are in nursing homes. 70% of the people who are in nursing homes have it paid for with Medicaid. And it's not just people living in high poverty. It affects middle-class families as well. Another thing about Medicaid, too, is that 80% of children who are living in poverty get access to food through Medicaid. 40% of women who are giving birth use Medicaid. And as you know, Mr. State Representative, Apple Health is Medicaid. If we got rid of $800 billion of Medicaid, it would blow a hole in the state budget, and it would affect the entire healthcare system. So even if you don't get Medicaid, if you go to a hospital to get care, your wait times will be longer, it'll take you longer to see a provider, and you will actually end up paying more. So taking care of our veterans is incredibly important. I will always fight to do that. I will also fight tooth and nail to make sure that we are not making cuts to Medicaid that hurt those who are on it, but also people who are not. And finally, I will say this. We want to be more efficient, but let's act like we have some sense when we're trying to be efficient.
All right, well, that's a hard one to follow, but you know what's super cool about my job is that it really is about what's happening right here in Thurston County to help veterans, right? And what's really exciting, actually today, Ashley attended in my place. I was off with a joint animal services kitty that I adopted, getting the shots, and so she attended today, but something called the Thurston County Veterans Hub. You know, and what I'm doing, and what we at Thurston County are doing, and what we plan to continue to do, is to bring resources together so that when someone needs help, my goal is that when you knock on a door, whoever you are, whatever you are, however you show up, you can get the help you need, and you don't have to go somewhere else to get it. Somebody actually helps you. And the Veterans Hub is one of those places. You can go as a veteran, and they have services. They have access to healthcare services. They'll hook you up with a case manager. They will have somebody who, there are new things called Veterans Peer Services workers. So people who are actual veterans who have already had to navigate some of these really tough things. You know, the fact that we don't have enough psychologists, the fact that we don't have enough mental health providers, the fact that we don't have enough health providers for someone to get into services within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Some of us know it takes 6 weeks. And so what can we do right here in Thurston County? And it's to continue to fund programs like that are actually helping our service members. And they coordinate housing. There's another thing that's going on in Thurston County. I just want to mention the other two pieces that are exciting to know is at that hub, they actually have a vehicle that will come out here to Yelm. And if somebody needs to go to a doctor's appointment and you are a veteran and you do not have transportation, the Veterans Hub will take you to where you need to go. You know, these are the kinds of services we need. The other thing I want to mention is housing. So for homeless housing, there's actually beds that are dedicated right here, paid by Thurston County for veterans. There's 3 open beds at any point in time. If a veteran is homeless and goes in and wants to access a safe place to sleep, we have beds dedicated just for them. Those are some of the things we can do here in Thurston County.
Here in Yelm locally, we depend on our regional partners, our partners at the feds, at the federal level, for a lot of these resources. But locally, we started having quarterly meetings with the veteran community. And through those meetings, at our most recent one of the most important things that they said that they need and want is telehealth. Access just to a small office that they can have private conversations with a doctor or their medical provider. And that's something that we are working on, and we're looking for a space that we can do that. And that's something we will be doing here in the near future. All right, we're going into the questions that have been submitted just now. So we'll get through as much of these as we can. And this first one is for Congresswoman Strickland and State Representative Marshall. What is going to be done to assure funding for wildlife firefighters doesn't disappear? What is going on to be done to assure funding for wildlife firefighters doesn't disappear, or wage disparity tied to budget? Locally, do you support HB 1628, creating Fire Service Policy Board? So, Congresswoman, why don't you answer the first question may be about what is going to be done to assure funding for wildland firefighters.
So when you think about what is happening right now with climate change, we cannot deny that we have wildfires in the summer. And if we don't have them blazing here in Washington state, we are being affected by smoke, whether it's coming from Oregon, Canada, or even Eastern Washington. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we have training for people to understand how to prepare if there happens to be a fire event during the summertime. I would also say too, though, as we look at emergency funding for FEMA, for example, we have to make sure that when there are those types of natural disasters and emergencies, that the federal government has the ability to fund states who need help. Those of you who have seen what's happened in California, for example, have witnessed fire departments from around the country showing up to help them. But we also have to make sure that folks are being compensated for the time and the overtime that they're being put in. So let's make sure that we adequately fund FEMA, that when people have the opportunity to respond to those things, that we're not tying the hands of federal government and trying to hold this funding hostage because there's something else we want. And then also let's make sure that we are recruiting and retaining people who are going to become firefighters. There are people who volunteer for the job, but as far as workforce development goes, we want to have an ample supply of people who can do this. But address climate change, make sure people understand what can happen to their homes and property, make sure that we're investing in emergency support and doing what we can to help people understand that summertime is often wildfire season in Washington state.
All right, so something that I don't know is really widely known is my first job ever after high school was as a firefighter. I graduated high school in Spokane. I packed up all of my belongings the next morning and I drove to Central Oregon where I started a firefighter EMT internship at Black Butte Ranch. And it is a very rural area. I also ended up being initial response on a major urban interface fire that turned into a major FEMA fire. President Bush flew over this fire back in 2002. It was called the B&B complex. So I've seen what happens when something gets quickly out of control. When it comes to House Bill 1628 that was referenced in the question, that one actually I voted yes on that. That is off the floor and currently on the Senate side. And I believe that was a unanimous vote. That's what I was looking up. I didn't quite get to it. I've also been supporting incentives to local property owners who actually do defensible space, clearing the debris and the ladder fuels around their properties, trying to find ways that they can interface with federal organizations, DNR and BLM, and get some assistance and some advice on how to have a more defensible space. And then finally, I have been supportive of a bill that would allow fire departments to signal that they know that a small fire is quickly escalating and allow for pre-positioning of state resources early rather than playing a reaction so that we can keep these fires at under 100 acres instead of letting them become large and out of control. So I know that the funding situation is something that I don't know any of us at the state level know how that looks yet. I think we're in for a big, unfortunately, partisan fight, but at the end of the day, we need to do what's best for the people of Washington, and we need to make sure that we can support these essential services to our population. So there's more to come on that one.
Thank you. Our next question goes to Commissioner Grant. Are you aware of the 30-acre solar project proposed for first quarter 2026 in the rural neighborhood of Thurston County, District 2?
Well, the question is a yes and no answer, so I'll say yes. But yes, I am aware. I've had someone reach out, a couple different people reach out around the project, and we've been getting information, and that's about all I can say really about it, is that yes, I know about it. I know that that we are trying to gather information on any regulations or things like that might affect the project, but other than that, that's all I really know.
Thank you. This one's for me. What other plans do you have for Yelm as a city in the near future? And what are your plans to help Washington get out of financial debt we are in? For the first one, The biggest plans is to focus on infrastructure. Focus on transportation projects. The biggest is transportation projects. We're gonna get these ones that have been sitting around for decades completed and finished, and we're gonna get new ones like these roundabouts completed and finished. We're gonna get new projects. Like I mentioned, we were just chatting about another possible JBLM gate. Why can't they open another gate closer? So these are big conversations, but if you don't ask the questions, we don't know if it's a possibility. So we're asking some questions. Some of them are a little bit out there, but we need some new solutions. So those are some of the bigger plans. And of course, focus on public safety. We're gonna increase public safety too. We are getting to 2 officers on duty at all times, which was a huge feat for us in the city of Yelm. What are your plans to help Washington get out of financial debt we're in? I don't know about Washington State, but here in the city of Yelm, we were doing pretty well financially. While other cities this last year had a lot of difficulties in their budget, you saw Olympia having to make a lot of cuts. Other cities as well were suffering. We're doing well here in Yelm, and that's because a lot of the fiscal responsibility that we have, and not necessarily doing things bigger than we are. And so we're focusing on things that matter here in Yelm, like public safety and transportation, and that's what we stick to. All right. Next question goes to Representative Marshall. How has your time in office gone early in your term? What have you been working on?
Oh, I like that question. Wide open. So I really have enjoyed it so far. I will say that it is about what I anticipated when I assumed office. Probably the steepest learning curve was just what support staff does what, so I could figure out how to start getting the bills that I was working on moving forward. I was happy to be the first freshman member in the class of 22 new representatives. I was the first one to get a bill onto the floor and voted off unanimously. And again, it was in the mental healthcare space that would, it allows certified, no, that's my medical assistant one. This is social work assistants and mental health care associates access to the Heal Washington Library. So this is a state-run library. It's housed at University of Washington. It allows these specialists to get the up-to-date research studies at no additional cost. It would come out of their licensing fees that's already being paid. So I was very happy with that. As far as what else have I been working on, I worked on a very unintentionally controversial bill that I prime sponsored that I think I'll use this time to kind of clear up. And it was for voter integrity. It's something that I have heard from a lot of constituents. Thousands have reached out to my office. And so the title of the bill was concerning in-person voting. And unfortunately, it became hyper-partisan, which I don't think it needed to be. Because it was believed that it would eliminate all mail-in voting. And that's not what it was about. It was about restoring the ability to go to a polling place for the persons that wanted to, and that would be the default. But anybody could still log into their online portal and request their mail-in ballot the same way. And it actually enhanced the in-person voting with the intent of expanding access to polls by allowing a 5-day window instead of just 1 day. It was kind of a middle ground between one side of the political aisle that really wants 1 day in-person voting and the other that wants, very robust mail-in. I thought it was a nice hybrid that would hopefully increase voter turnout so everybody has trust and confidence in the system and is able to cast their vote and believe that and know it's going to be counted. So that's something that I was working on. Unfortunately, it never got a hearing. It did get a lot of mixed emails to my office. That is the single most received comment that I've had so far. I think I'm somewhere around 30,000 comments on that, so yeah.
All right, this one's for the Congresswoman. Why is Congress not enforcing their power of the purse? What are you doing to rein in Doge?
So I just want to say one thing about the voting. So Pierce County was the last holdout in the entire state that still had in-person voting and mail. And when we finally switched to mail, it was really painful for a lot of people. So whatever we do to increase voter turnout is what we should do. So what am I doing to rein in Doge? So I'm going to have to give you all a little bit of a civics lesson. And I had to learn this lesson myself when I first got to Congress. So in order to pass a law or a bill, there are three things that have to happen. It has to pass the US House of Representatives, and right now that means it has to have a minimum of 218 votes. There are 215 Democrats who are in the House. Then it has to go to the Senate, and they have a supermajority that the Democrats don't have. They have a majority, not supermajority, that the Democrats don't have. And then after that, it gets signed into law. So some of the things that you are seeing happening right now with this administration in DOGE are being done in the name of government efficiency. And as I said earlier, I don't think anyone agrees with any organization being more efficient, whether it's government, whether it's a nonprofit organization, or even if it's a business. That's a good thing. However, coming in there and selecting certain departments without a plan or rhyme or reason is not making government more efficient. Putting veterans out of work does not make government more efficient. Closing Social Security offices and making it harder for people to access their benefits or sign up does not make government more efficient. Taking food away from children does not make government more efficient. Neither does taking away health care from our elders who are in nursing homes. None of that makes government more efficient. So what are we doing right now? We're doing three things. We're informing the public exactly how DOGE is going to affect you. And I just gave you a very small menu how it will affect you in a daily life. Number two, we are doing what we can to pass rules to rein this in. There's a bill right now that has the support of every single Democrat. All we need are 3 Republicans to grow a spine and do the right thing and vote to protect our private data and information. Finally, we are using the law, suing, lawsuits, legal recourse. And it takes a while to get things through the court system, but judges who have been appointed by presidents from Bush to Obama to the other Bush to Biden, every time we go to court to defend against DOGE, we prevail. When there was an attempt to not have birthright citizenship of children who were born here in the US, regardless of their parent status, we prevailed. When there was an attempt to freeze funding that was already approved and appropriated in the last Congress and keep money from coming to the states for important programs, that freeze got lifted. So we are informing, we are trying to pass laws where we can, and we are litigating. And one thing I'm going to ask of all of you is one important question. When we think about what this country is supposed to represent, it is supposed to represent opportunity and freedom for all. We're supposed to believe that discrimination is wrong. And we're supposed to believe that any person who wants to serve in the military, regardless of their background or who they love or how they roll, if they are qualified to serve our country and we're having a recruiting crisis, they should be able to serve. So as we think about what it means to be an American, for me, as someone who considers herself a moderate Democrat, this for me is not a conversation about one extreme or the other. This should be a conversation about who we are as Americans. Who disagrees that we need more housing? Who disagrees that childcare should be affordable? Who disagrees that our elders should be able to stay in a safe nursing home if that's what we decide to do? Who disagrees that disabled children should be able to get funding from the Department of Education if they need it? Who disagrees with kids getting food? At some point, as we watch these things collapse and what is happening with DOGE, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be an American and a US citizen? You don't get to wave a flag and cheer on Donald Trump while he's just trying to destroy this country. You don't get to wave a flag and discriminate against people who want to serve in this military. We either love this country or we don't. And there's no one way to do it. We include everybody. So, yeah, that's my speech. This is how we fight Doge. We stand up, we speak out, and we tell our friends who are Republicans who are afraid to stand up to grow a spine.
This question is for me. How can you help us get an off-campus emergency room built in Yelm? Yeah, well, to start, we had to get an urgent care center here in Yelm, and that was the first step. About 3 years ago, I reached out to Multi-Care, and I asked the question, how can we get more medical facilities here in Yelm? How can you help us get the health care that the people of Yelm deserve? And they said, well, we have been looking at Yelm, but we haven't seen it grow enough yet. Are we ready? And I said, absolutely we are. And what can I do to help? And so they talked about different locations. They worked with our planning department to ensure that they have they had everything in line to build the place. And now that's what they're doing. They're going to be opening up here next month, and we're going to have Yelm's going to have our first urgent care center ever. And that conversation didn't stop there. I asked, well, what else can we get out here? And just like this emergency room, we're not going to get like a giant hospital in Yelm. That's going to take probably decades and decades, if ever, to get out here. But we can get an emergency room like they just opened over in Lacey. And one of the cool things that helped me out was our partnership with our local fire authority out here. They reached out to me and said, hey, I heard that you were looking to get an emergency center out here. How can we help? And here's information. And they gave us all the stats that their call volume and how many of those trips they take out to Lacey and how much time and money could be saved if there was one in here in Yelm. And so I forwarded that off to Multi-Care, and we're going to be meeting about it shortly. And they really want to see how this Indigo performs first, but it is something that's on their radar and on the horizon. So I'm proud that we are going to look at other medical options as well. All right. Moving on to another question for Commissioner Grant. You spoke up, and this is from a student here. You spoke about your role in the courts. Do you have plans for encouraging the youth to help out Do you have plans for encouraging the youth to keep out of the system? I'm guessing the court system.
Do I have plans? Let's see. So do I have plans on encouraging youth to keep out of the system? Oh, well, that's a complicated question. But, I think that actually this week I toured our Family Justice Center. I don't know if anyone knows that this is an actual thing, but it's a thing. And it's right out by our jail. Except for this Family Justice Center is doing things like gardening. And there's the word juvie, we used to call it when I was a kid. If you got in trouble, you went to juvie or juvenile hall. We built in Thurston County a 60-bed juvenile facility. And you know how many folks we have in there today? 8. So we are working on this. We are working hard at diversion. We're working hard at how do we create programs so that we don't actually have to have records for these kids who just need to be connected. When I think about what I needed as a kid in Shelton, that's where I'm from originally. I grew up there, graduated from there. I was bored. And when I got bored, I got in trouble. I needed connection. So what we need to be thinking about doing, and the thing that I'm working on doing, is I came into word yard. Yard is a perfect example of what we need to be doing to have intervention with our youth. Sports, choir, music, skateboarding, even graffiti walls for the people who want to be artists. How do we find things that people can do to keep them busy? The other thing I want to mention is peer work. I'm going to say it over and over again, but it's a newer thing for people who don't know what it is. But it means that for the kids who have gone through the juvenile justice system or diverted from it, or went and got their charge taken off their record because they didn't commit any more crimes because they did the right thing, they can actually become something called a juvenile peer, meaning that they can hook up with other folks, who are struggling, other 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and actually say, hey man, this is what I might have done differently. And that connection to a big brother, big sister peer is really key in helping some of our youth.
All right, I think this one goes out to the Congresswoman and our state representative. What are you doing to guarantee the rights of gun owners, including the right of gun shops, availability of ammo? Please stop the attack on our, I can't read that, God-given right.
I don't think it comes as any surprise. I'm a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. I am a staunch supporter of the Constitution. I think that's should be the guiding light for anybody in government. It was written for a purpose and to ensure that, there are protections that citizens retain that the government should not be able to take from them. In Washington, we have an even stronger Constitution when it comes to guns. Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution says that your right will not be impaired, and it's in defense of yourself, others' property shall not be impaired. It's even stronger than the U.S. Constitution. I guess first is education. A lot of people that are very fearful of guns and guns in society are not well educated on them. And so I always offer, I have a legal range on my property, and anybody who hasn't shot before who wants to come learn is more than welcome to come, and I will teach them. Second from that is I don't think anybody really wants gun crime. And I think that we can address gun crime and gun violence by actually, one, enforcing the laws on our books, starting with enforcing the laws for any criminal behavior and making sure that criminals know that in Washington State, we will actually hold them accountable when they do something wrong. Unfortunately, due to various reasons, people are not being prosecuted and people are not spending time in jail even for bad crimes, and they're recommitting crimes. Washington State, I believe we rank 49th, which is really bad for crime, just in general. Property crime, I believe we're number 1 in the country for the most property crime. So addressing crime would help. I know I co-sponsored a bill earlier this year, again, I didn't get a hearing, that would actually put a bounty on guns that are used in crimes. So if somebody turns in somebody who uses a gun illegally, they would be rewarded for actually turning that in and getting the actual crime used in something illegal, getting it off the street. Right now, all of the things we're seeing come out of the State House, a lot of the rules on the books are only going to be abided by legal gun owners, people that are responsible and want to follow the law. And by creating more burdens, all we're doing is taking potential new gun owners, persons who in a dangerous society are wanting to provide some personal protection, we're making it overly cumbersome to become a lawful gun owner, adding extra layers of fees, turn it into a potential class issue, and persons that live in more dangerous neighborhoods, persons who don't have high earning jobs are just unable to achieve personal safety with gun ownership because they don't have the resources. And then we've added extra training requirements and then extra wait times. And I understand that everything is well intended, but nothing that I've seen in the state of Washington that's been a common sense gun law has done anything to actually address criminal activity with guns. It has all been targeted at the lawful gun owner, and it is not moving the pendulum at all. We are seeing increasing gun crime despite having increased legislation. So I would like to see us actually enforce the laws on the books and hold criminals accountable so we can decrease gun crime. And I would like to, I spent until 3 o'clock in the morning one night rallying against one of the bills that would infringe on the Second Amendment. So I'll continue to fight any additional gun law, and I will be looking at other alternatives to address the intent, which is decrease crime in our state.
Thank you very much, and I agree with you. We have had many conversations since I was mayor of Tacoma and now in Congress about how we address gun violence, and that's really the issue here. If you want to own a gun and you're responsible with it and you handle your business, more power to you, however you use it. And a lot of people who use guns are actually using it because they like to go hunting or they want to have it for safety. I'm down with that. But I think about gun violence, I think about a few things. Number one, how do we keep illegal guns out of the hands of kids? Because I'm going to pivot over to young people who should not have any business having guns. And I think about this underground gun trade that exists, guns that come into our country, crossing borders, and also guns that are manufactured here that we don't keep track of. You can go online and buy a gun without a license. And as we talk about gun violence with young people, I have to ask myself one question. We know that a lot of young people acquire guns because they steal them. They actually are stolen property. But the other thing I have to ask myself is, when we have these horrible mass shootings and school shootings, what is going through the mind of a young man that he thinks it's okay to go shoot up a school or hurt people he knows and terrorize his classmates? And yes, it could be a mental health problem, or it could be something as simple as the society in which these kids have to try to survive today. Social media is cruel and ugly to our children. Social media can erode your self-esteem and feel rejected and lonely and terrible. And if you look at the profiles of some of these young people who commit these horrific school shootings and gun crimes, it is often about them not feeling like they have a place anywhere. I'm going to plug a series that I watched on Netflix. 4 episodes, very easy to watch, and it's called Adolescence. And it's a series about a 13-year-old kid in Britain who is accused of committing a murder. But the layers and depth that they go into about how he feels as a young man, what it means to be a young man in today's society, and how these different relationships affect your psyche is something that I believe that they should show for everyone who teaches school, any elected official, and I think that is one way to help us address some of this gun violence. What is going on with our young men in this country where they think it's okay to shoot up a school and their classmates? But I do agree with you. This is about violence that happens with illegal guns and guns in the hands of people who should not have them. If you have a history of domestic violence, you should not be able to get a gun, because more women die from intimate partner violence than any other way of death. So let's be common sense about it. Let's respect our Second Amendment rights, but let's do everything we can to protect people from illegal guns and make sure that people can feel safe in this country.
All right, we're a little over time. I know a few of us will stay up here, but can we give a round of applause to all the electeds here? Took time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. We do have one more town hall coming up on this Saturday at 9:30 with our state representatives and our state senator here. So if you want to show up 9:30 a.m., same place. We're trying to normalize town halls here in Yelm now. Thank you all for being here. Y'all have a good night.